The world is on the brink of catastrophe. A passenger plane has crashed in India. There were more than 200 people on board. The Middle East could erupt at any moment. The US is evacuating diplomats and preparing for strikes. Putin is building up military power. Moscow already sees Ukraine as a springboard for an offensive against Moldova and Romania. And in the US Senate, the Secretary of Defense was forced to justify the insufficient support for Ukraine. Greetings, my name is Karina Kleshen, and right now, here are the top stories. But first, like this video if you support Ukraine and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose each other on YouTube. Once again, a Boeing and once again a disaster. In India, a passenger plane carrying more than 240 people has crashed. According to local media, the plane, which was flying to London, climbed only 190 meters and 5 minutes after takeoff, crashed into a doctor's dormitory.
Thank God, a European country.
The causes of the plane crash are still being determined, but rescuers immediately rushed to the crash site. There is a massive fire at the scene of the tragedy. I laughed, but there was nothing for them all. It is known that there were citizens of various countries on board the Boeing, including India, the United Kingdom, Portugal and Canada. Among the passengers was the former governor of the Indian state of Gujarat. All those injured were urgently taken to the nearest hospitals. All 242 people who were on board died. Search and rescue operations are ongoing. In previous episodes, we told you about a strange video from the head of US National Intelligence regarding the dangers of nuclear weapons.
Today, we are closer to the brink of nuclear destruction than ever before. The political elite and warmongers are carelessly fueling fear and tension between nuclear powers. Perhaps it's because they are confident that they will have access to nuclear shelters for themselves and their families, shelters that ordinary people will not have access to. So it is up to us, the people, to speak out and demand an end to this madness. We must reject the path to nuclear war and work towards creating a world where no one has to live in fear of a nuclear holocaust.
So now we are even more convinced that this warning is connected to the negotiations between the US and Iran regarding nuclear weapons. In short, Iran wants to have it. The US is against it.
They cannot have nuclear weapons. It's that simple.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Tensions are rising because Iran doesn't want anyone telling it what to do, especially America. The US, in turn, is threatening to strike Iran if the nuclear talks fail. I don't want to scare anyone or speculate about where things are heading, but the US Embassy in Iraq is beginning an emergency evacuation of diplomats due to the tense situation in the region. The US is also preparing to evacuate its personnel from Kuwait. Even the families of US Navy personnel in Bahrain have been given the green light to leave. In addition, Britain has warned tankers and other vessels about increased risks when crossing the Persian Gulf. And to top it all off, Israeli media are warning that Israel is preparing to attack Iran and that only a few days remain until it happens. And these intentions, as reported by the New York Times, are more than serious, which is causing significant concern in the White House.
In my opinion, Israel is very close to attacking Iran. We are just a few days away from an attack.
Do you think the Middle East is on the brink of a major military conflict? The situation is also escalating on the Ukrainian front. The Russian army is making gains in the Sumy direction. The Russians have also captured the village of Vorishne in the Kharkiv region and advanced near Dovkhenke and Zapadne. There's also progress in the village of Bohatyr in the Donetsk region. The front line is getting closer and closer to the capital of Ukraine. Does Putin intend to stop? Does he want peace? Of course not. Moreover, Putin has instructed the military command to multiply the combat capabilities of Russia's ground forces several times over.
And it is important to increase their combat capabilities as quickly as possible, to create a strong foundation for development, and to ensure the development of advanced models and weapon systems with the highest tactical and technical characteristics and modernization potential. And of course, the new state armament program must become an effective tool for implementing the recently approved strategy for the development of the Navy up to 2015.
And while Trump gives Putin another 2 weeks, Zelenskyy voices Russia's next territorial objectives. Odessa could be next.
After all, once again, today we are here in our beautiful city in Odessa. This beautiful city is a target for Russia, and Russia wants to destroy it, just as it has already done with countless cities and villages in the occupied territories. Kirilo Budanov, Russian military plans point to this region Odessa and then towards the border with Moldova and Romania.
Such Kremlin plans are nothing new for Ukrainians, since all of Putin's actions indicate this, at the very least the reinforcement of Russian troops stationed in Transnistria. But we believe in the strength of the Ukrainian military and in the support of our partners. Unfortunately, Russia does not understand words, so we have to fight, because the next targets could be European countries. Western politicians also understand that Putin will not stop in Ukraine. In the US Congress, Republican senators criticized Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth over the Trump administration's efforts to end the war in Ukraine by involving Russia in negotiations. The minister was asked to comment on American security assistance to Ukraine, but instead he began to criticize previous administrations in response.
Under the previous administration, during the Obama administration, Crimea was seized and we gave them blankets. During President Trump's first term, he gave the Ukrainians javelins and the Russians did not invade. Under Biden, the Russians actually invaded and the assistance was provided slowly, not in full, and as a result, everything reached a deadlock. Fortunately, the javelins provided by Trump actually stopped the Russian advance.
Well, we've already heard about the javelins, but for some reason they didn't really stop Russia. They say that now Putin knows that Trump is strong. Supposedly, this influences Putin. But then, why are the Russians still continuing to seize territory? Senator Mitch McConnell isn't so sure, because according to him, America's reputation is at stake and Russia won't stop.
Mitch McConnell, I think that victory is determined by the people who have to live there, the Ukrainians. And I don't think they will ever come to the conclusion that victory means essentially accepting the Russian perspective on all of this. So what do you think the Russians are up to? It seems to me that they're not very interested in talking. It looks like they're escalating the war.
To this, the Minister of Defense responded that Europe needs to strengthen its own defense. Meanwhile, Mitch McConnell called for defending democratic allies from authoritarian aggressors. After the heated exchange, the head of the US Army decided to have his say as well. He answered the question of whether Putin would stop in Ukraine.
Will Putin stop in Ukraine?
I don't think so, sir. I think he will keep going.
And what do you think does America truly believe in Ukraine's victory? Or is it already at the stage of accepting Putin as stronger than Trump? Write your thoughts in the comments. Meanwhile, Trump decided to share what he actually talks about with Putin during their phone calls. He says that he has an excellent relationship with the dictator. But despite this, putting an end to the war against Ukraine is the main topic of their conversations. Trump says that they mostly talk about the war. And of course, if Trump were president, this war would not have happened. However, according to John Bolton, the former national security advisor to the 45th US President Trump, Trump considers Putin his friend.
He considers Vladimir Putin a friend. I don't know if Putin feels the same way, but that's what Trump thinks. And during the campaign, when Trump said I could end this war in 24 hours, I could invite Zelenskyy and Putin into the same room and sit them together. He thought that his friend Putin would agree to this.
Moreover, Bolton noted that at present he sees no evidence that Trump is willing to do anything that would upset Putin.
As of today, I see no evidence that Trump is willing to do anything that would upset his friend Putin. And this is very dangerous, not only from Ukraine's perspective, but also in terms of peace and stability in Europe as a whole. Because if Trump's efforts at negotiations with other countries and international partners ultimately fail, he may decide to abandon such hopes for a diplomatic solution. In that situation, he could also withdraw from supplying Ukraine with the necessary intelligence systems and weaponry that are currently being provided to support Ukraine's defense efforts.
To be friends with a murderer and a dictator? Seriously? Is this what Trump's support for the Ukrainian people looks like? Mr. Donald, is this the reason why military aid to Ukraine is being delayed? By the way, thanks to the Trump administration, perhaps so as not to upset Putin'S organization that monitors Russia's war crimes in the war against Ukraine is shutting down, the organization announced that as of July honest, they are laying off all staff across Ukraine, since previously the team was financially supported by the US State Department. This year, funding for the initiative was cut as part of cost reductions by the US Government Efficiency Department. Apparently, exposing Russian criminality and violence to the world is now considered ineffective. And against this backdrop, lately it often feels to me like we're living in some kind of parallel reality. Because while Russia is killing Ukrainians and threatening to attack NATO, it's being congratulated on Russia Day. And not just anyone, but US Secretary of State Mark Rubio.
On behalf of the American people, I want to congratulate the Russian people on Russia Day. The United States remains committed to supporting the Russian people as they continue to pursue their aspirations for a better future.
And what the hell kind of support for the Russian people is that? Sorry, but this is just... I simply don't have any polite words to comment on this. But fortunately, our military balanced out this crazy news a bit and sent their own congratulations to the Kremlin for Russia Day. Warmly and with fireworks. These are shots of the arrival in the Moscow region. Our drones attacked the Rezonit factory. It specializes in the aerospace and defense industries. The drones also paid a visit to the Kursk region. Very symbolically, on Russia Day, the occupiers were also congratulated by our general staff with updated statistics on enemy losses. As of today, Russia has already lost 1 million killed and wounded on the front in Ukraine. Meanwhile, it seems the Kremlin is very afraid of Ukrainian drones. Apparently, Putin has nightmares at night where the head of the security service of Ukraine, Malyuk, destroys his precious strategic aviation.
This is how the Belaya airfield looks right now, pretty impressive. Strategic enemy aviation.
And Putin even spoke about this publicly. He says that after Operation Web, it's become far too frightening to store weapons out in the open, so he ordered funds to be allocated to protect the airfields.
It is important to calculate the needs in advance and begin preparing the infrastructure for deploying new weapon systems, including bases, arsenals, airfields, and so on. The financial resources necessary for the construction and modernization of such facilities must be allocated as a separate line in the program. I know this well. I'm always signing these documents when they come in, not because things are going well, of course, but because the managers ask to shift these expenses to other seemingly more important budget items. But what does this lead to? It leads to the situation where new weapon systems appear and then they just end up standing out in an open field.
How does the Kremlin plan to protect airfields? The question remains open because even Trump admits it's almost impossible to hide from them since UAVs are an incredible weapon.
Drones are something new, a new weapon, the weapon of choice. If you look at this terrible war between Russia and Ukraine, which we are trying to stop, you'll see that it's a drone war. Drones are incredible. You wouldn't believe how fast and smart they are. That is, they are capable of doing incredible things with these drones.
Do you have any ideas on how Putin could protect his airfields? Because so far, the only thing that comes to my mind is either air defense systems on every building nearby, like near the Kremlin, or maybe heavy artillery in the form of shamans. For the first time since the war began, Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić has come to Ukraine. He attended the Ukraine Southeast Europe Summit, which took place in Odessa. Moreover, the pro-Russian Vučić stated that Serbia is ready to help rebuild 1 or 2 Ukrainian cities or a region in order to demonstrate its support for Ukraine.
I would like to take, together with you, Mr. President, 1 or 2 cities or regions that we could help rebuild. I think this would be very clear and noticeable for the Ukrainian people, so that they could receive clear support. In other words, something similar to what Azerbaijan has done here.
But he came, made promises and left without signing the joint declaration of the leaders of the Southeast European countries, which condemns Russian aggression and calls for new sanctions against Russia. Moreover, he personally explained why he did not sign this document. He says that this way he did not betray Russia. Political analyst Oleg Sakian explained that with such a visit to Ukraine, he balanced out his visit to Moscow.
Therefore, the visit now, during the summit together with other countries in Odessa, is clearly a step that is perceived by Russia with jealousy and great pain. But in doing so, Vucic balances out his visit to Moscow and demonstrates that no, he remains in European solidarity, despite all the tightrope walking he has to do.
So will Serbia really help rebuild Ukrainian cities, or will it end up playing into the Kremlin's hands? I think we'll find out in due time. And finally, a story from the world of business. An American businessman decided to come to Poland to buy the famous football club Wisła. But fate steered him away from making that purchase. Tomasz Kokosinski ended up in intensive care on June 4th after choking on a dumpling in a restaurant. It was because of this that the man died, never having bought his share in the football club. Please like this video to support what we do, and be sure to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss our next episodes. See you next time!